Umbrella Academy is back, and while I haven't watched all of the episodes yet, I feel pretty safe saying that this is an improvement on the first season in pretty much every way. So before I get into my specific thoughts, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing so that you can see my reviews of upcoming shows such as Lovecraft Country, among others. And if you give me a like, I'd really appreciate it. So getting into Umbrella Academy, and this is the second season. If you didn't see the first season, it's about this group of kids that have different powers, and they were raised at this academy together, and they're kind of just a band of misfits. And the first season was flawed. It had kind of an X-Men meets Wes Anderson vibe, as a lot of people pointed out, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the quirkiness of it, but there was a lot of pacing problems, and there were some issues with the disjointedness of it. But overall, I would say that they've fixed those problems here. I feel like not only have they given the show a lot more direction, I also feel like they've basically cut the 10 minutes of unnecessary flab from every episode. This season, the gang finds themselves in Dallas in the 60s trying to prevent a doomsday event before it happens. And they've kind of shifted the focus this season. The main character in the previous season, I feel like, was Luther, played by Tom Hopper, and I think that the showrunners must have realized that he was a little bit of a bland main character. I like the actor, but I feel like he basically is just your stereotypical male tough guy leader, and he didn't have a whole lot more than that to add other than perhaps his oversized bulk. But this season they've shifted the responsibility of leadership to Five, who I think is a fan favorite, and I think that was a wise decision. Now, granted, I have read the comics by Gerard Way of My Chemical Romance, and this was more or less how the second graphic novel in the series went down as well, where it did focus on the number 5, but I think they've even gone further with that, and I think that it's a nice series in that if you've read the graphic novel, you kind of know where things are going, but there are still some surprises in store. Actually, quite a few surprises. There are some characters that are back that you might have thought were finished, and I think that there are some new welcome additions in the cast, most notably Diego's new acquaintance from the mental facility where he's being held, played by Ritu Arya, and she is a marvelous addition to the cast. And while I haven't always thought that Diego was the most interesting character, I found him to have similar problems to Luther in terms of inciting viewer interest. I feel like this season has done a good job of pairing off the less interesting characters with the more interesting characters, so there's always something compelling going on. They've really thrown a lot of money onto the screen this season. The scenes flow together well, they're very crisp, the dialogue is funny. There are some repeated gags that if you pay attention, they start to get a little bit repetitive. For instance, there's this gag where someone will break into something and someone else will say, you know, there's a key right there. And there's some version of that gag multiple times in the first few episodes. But there's a lot of humor here that is quite hilarious. I personally thought the funniest jokes came from Robert Sheehan's Klaus, who is dispensing modern pop lyrics as if they are wisdom, and this has turned him into this guru, and people keep complimenting him on his depth, even though he's only sharing the lyrics from 90s pop songs for the most part. This show has a lot of the great musical action sequences that we came to really enjoy in season 1. I don't think there have been really any standout sequences in the episodes that I've watched so far, and I would say that while very, very well executed, I don't feel like any of the action sequences really stood out so far. There wasn't any action sequence that I would say, that's a fight scene that I'm going to watch again. They were just fight scenes in between the plot moving forward. And as far as the plot goes, again, there's kind of the everyone has to band together to save the world eventually theme going on where the characters are off on their side journeys until then. Ellen Page's Vanya, not going to go into tons of spoilers, but she does have amnesia at the beginning of the season, and it's interesting where they take that. Her character is a significantly different character than the first season, and I think that they've changed her in some ways to make her more like Ellen Page in real life, which I personally have reservations about, but can't really get into that without getting into spoilers. I feel like some of the characters are a little bit poorly defined, which is a bummer. My favorite actress in the cast, actress, both, is Emmy Raver Lampman, who was actually a Broadway singer who was a replacement actor on Hamilton. She was the second actress to play a certain role in the cast, and I really, really liked her performance in season 1. I thought she brought a lot of sensitivity to her performance, and here I just don't think that the character has that much definition. I love the actress, let me be very clear about that, but I feel like, again, the character has a very cool power set, but they're just not utilizing the character that well. They've kind of incorporated kind of what it was like for African Americans in the 60s, which, some people might argue not that much has changed, but there have definitely been some improvements, but it's honestly a little bit of a tonal problem for this show, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't have talked about this issue, because I think that it would be kind of really hard to have a African American character in the 60s and not address the elephant in the room, but it does create this tonal problem. I didn't love the show Watchmen. I had a lot of issues with that show, but I felt like the tone of that show was a lot more adequate for developing issues of race. And it's interesting because we've been having all these shows lately, and I can't think of a show that I've watched recently that didn't in some way grapple with police abuse of authority, and particularly how they abuse their authority with minorities. And these aren't even the shows, I think, that were made in response to recent events. I think that these shows were all written and produced and probably in the can before the events of recent months, because I think the pandemic kind of stopped all the filming. So it's interesting, we haven't even seen the shows shot in response to that yet, but this show to me comes off as a little bit naive in that sense. I generally like the direction this season is going. I love the 60s touches. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but as I said, I think it's a vast improvement over the first season. The characters that were good in the first season continue to be good. Number 5, played by Aidan Gallagher, continues to be a delight. I think that he's probably going to be most people's favorite character. I think a lot of people will like Klaus as well. They've kind of jettisoned a lot of things that happened in the first season to kind of go in a different direction, but it really benefits from being a second season because they have all the character development. All these characters are already established, and they just hit the ground running and never stop. But let me know what you think of this second season in the comments. If you're interested in seeing a spoiler review, let me know that as well. And if you'd give me a like, I'd appreciate it. And as always, you can watch more videos right now.